The last award tonight is the H.J. Brunnier Award, which is given for outstanding achievement in structural engineering. In 2001, the award changed to the H.J. Brunnier Lifetime Achievement Award to focus the award on an individual's entire body of work. I'm proud to introduce our very own Ashraf Habibullah to present the H.J. Brunnier Lifetime Achievement Award to this year's honoree.
Thank you, Emily. Well, you know what? First, I want to start out by congratulating all the winners of this evening. You know, my lighted jackets have been looking for a celebration. They've been hanging in my closet all for the past 18 months. There's nowhere to go. So when I opened the door to my jacket closet, this one jumped out at me and wanted to come here. So here we go. So I just, this association and this, you guys are the superstars of a superstar profession. You know, it's a profession that makes life better for all of humanity on a daily basis. And I've said that over and over many times before. And today, of course, it's my honor to present to you one of the superstars of our profession that I have actually worked with for a very, very long time. And I really don't know where to start. I started making out his resume and it was 25 million pages long, and I just didn't know. So I thought I'd just talk about him. And because his contributions to this industry and of course to humanity at large are so great that it's impossible to fathom the engineering world without considering the impact of his work. I mean, he's a visionary whose professional life literally represents 60 years of originality and creativity. He was the person that developed the numerical techniques to design the Saturn rocket and the Apollo lunar capsule that put man onto the humanity onto the moon and brought him back. You know, he co-fathered with another structural engineer the finite element method that completely changed the course of engineering analysis, not only in structural engineering, but practically every discipline of engineering. You know, he's the original developer of computer software that currently is used in over 160 countries. He was the first person to develop numerical techniques on a small personal computer like the Radio Shack machine with only 64K of memory. It resulted in earthquake engineering technology getting proliferated all across the world, especially to developing nations, so that they could build seismically resistant structures. You know, there's hardly any remote corner of the world where the engineering specialties have not benefited infinitely from his work. I mean, if you look, it's not just structural engineering, it's all the software numerical techniques that we have at CSI. They're all based on his original work. But if you look in automotive engineering, if you look in aerospace engineering, you look in the design of aircrafts, the blender blade that is used every morning at Starbucks to create your Frappuccino, and also to design the grooves of a potato chip for maximum crunch. I mean, that's how much impact his work has all across humanity. And of course, for me personally, I remember looking for a job 50 years ago, and you know, being a young, enthusiastic person about structural engineering, even back then, I had a tendency to overpresent my qualifications to the person that was offering me a job, and I got myself into a little bit of trouble. So I ran all the way up, you know, to meet this person at his office, and he helped me not only get my first job, but helped me hold on to it for nearly 4 years until I moved on to something else, Actually, so something else was starting computers and structures. So I have so much admiration for this particular person, because when he developed the original software upon which all of the software, computers and structures is actually based, he made that technology available to everybody across the world. The original source code of his products were just freely available for anybody that wanted to study them, use them, and there were thousands of versions of different of his software that were available all across the world. So, and I have worked with him for the past 50 years, and he has helped me with stuff on the back of a napkins over lunch, and solved issues and problems that I spent hours trying to solve. So here we go. Can we now have the picture? It is my honor and extreme pleasure to introduce to you Professor Edward L. Wilson. Congratulations, Ed. You're my hero and superstar. I told you that a billion times over. You already know that. The love and respect that I have for you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ashraf, and thank you for promoting my software all over the world. I get a great satisfaction out of its accomplishment, and I have you to thank for that, and many of my other students that have helped me not only develop the software, but the numerical techniques that we used. And I really like to thank the Structural Engineers Association of Northern California, although I missed the annual dinner. We missed it last year, but I always see one or two of my own classmates from 1953, 54, when I got my BS from Cal. Lee David, for instance, and so on, F. Hirsch were with me almost 70 years ago. But the Brunnier Award is, of course, he was the first registered structural engineer in California, but there were structural engineers before him. But for instance, I'll use, Brunnier had something common. My father had something common with Brunnier. They were both born in 1882. Although, and my dad was born in San Francisco on 3rd and Minnie Street, very close. Minnie Street, in case you don't know, is an alley in back of Mission Street. But he was on the wrong side of the tracks, but he worked for some famous people. One of them was John B. Leonard, who started practicing before, who was actually born in 1864 and came before the earthquake and started building concrete buildings in San Francisco, which almost all of them survived and were not damaged in the earthquake. So the earthquake of '06 made not my father famous, but the man he worked for. And of course, as it's known, Brunnier, the earthquake brought him to San Francisco, and he was a practicing engineer at that time. But the other thing about that same time is my father, in addition to being a construction man, was in the National Guard and was called up to walk guard over the ruins of San Francisco. And became very knowledgeable about what type of buildings failed and not. And the other thing he told me is that Santa Rosa and Petaluma area were far more devastated than the main damage was the fire. All the chimneys were still standing in San Francisco. We're on up the coast. There are 50 miles or 100 miles where all the chimneys had collapsed. And so he had quite a bit of experience with construction. Later on, he and Leonard went up and built Fern Bridge up by the mouth of the Eel River, right south of Eureka. And on that trip, he met my mother. He was 24 years old, and my mother was 15 years old. But later on, he returned to Ferndale and Fernbridge and married my mother, who was born in Petrolia. And they had a famous earthquake in 1992, where 3 earthquakes occurred in 18 hours, near 7 on the birthplace of my mother. So I learned, and I was born there, of course, and so I was used to earthquakes, probably being knocked over out of the cradle. So my life has been filled with earthquakes. But Brunnier has quite a record of being the engineer of record over on campus. I think the most famous and maybe oldest is iHouse. But there are many others that spending most of my life on campus that I heard that name very often. And it may be possible that he maybe was still alive in 1961 when my first visit to the Structural Engineers Association to give a talk on the work I did on the first two-dimensional frame program, Frame 2. Wrote it for Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill, and showing, by the way, I didn't think up the ideas there. I worked for Ray Clough, who was a real genius. And as a graduate student, I worked 6 years with him on research and consulting work that were the most productive years of my life. And but more recently, I guess it's time that I should retire, but I can't. There are still problems to solve. I have a friend, Professor Jim Kelly, and I both started teaching in 1965 together. He was from Stanford, and of course I returned from Aerojet at the same time. And so we have a lot of things to talk about and also sharing a bottle of wine, I might ask. And we find that he's disappointed that the base isolation that he specialized for so many years is not being used much by structural engineers. And we're sure now the reason many people right now, they're using elastic analysis and really crude methods. In fact, they're using approximate methods. The reason it's not working is because they're not isolating the structure. They're still applying the dam loads to the structure. They should be applying it below the isolator to isolate the building from the energy flowing into it. If you do that, you will really get the building standing still during the earthquake. The theoreticians claim it's just by making the first mode a long frequency. Now, you can really put a barrier down there to prevent the energy. It comes from the earth, you know. It doesn't come through the air. So all you have to do is go back to fundamentals, and you've got yourself a beautiful solution that maybe you can get 90% of the base shear. So that's why I've been pointing out for many years now that we should be using a total displacement method. But I think it's that why I'm almost 90 years old and still excited about engineering. It's keeping me alive. So don't feel sorry for me. I will still be around for a while. And I look forward to the yearly banquet. And all of us old guys really appreciate the free meal that we get every year. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ed, and congratulations to all of our award winners.